Hey, it's Mo Egger. Summertime means warm nights on the outdoor patio at Long Neck Sports Grill. They've got 4K TVs outside, so you don't have to miss a game. Awesome wings, Northern Kentucky's best beer selection, great service, 3 terrific locations in Northern Kentucky, and maybe you could have a Long Necks in your neighborhood. Your chance is here. Go to longnecksportsgrillfranchise.com. That's longnecksportsgrillfranchise.com. Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay long. Come often. We do this every single Wednesday. We talk injuries with one of the experts from OrthoCincy. The great thing about OrthoCincy is they've got specialists and locations all over the tri-state, and they offer walk-in orthopedic urgent care weekdays 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturdays 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Learn more at OrthoCincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. Dr. Matthew DesJardins is with us from OrthoCincy. Bengals had 2 defensive tackles leave the game on Sunday, both with hamstring injuries. I'm going to start with this and admit it might be a little bit of a dumb question, but I'll ask it anyway. You have defensive tackles who aren't asked to run long distances, and then you have wide receivers like T. Higgins, who's dealing with a hamstring issue. He's asked to run long distances. Does that have any bearing on how this particular injury is treated?
You know, they're really not. The treatment options for the hamstring pulls are really similar no matter your size or position. So initially it's a little bit of relative rest and some local treatment, you know, the usuals like stretching. They'll start them working on some strengthening exercises early. The biggest thing with hamstring injuries, Mo, is it's very difficult to predict the right time to return back to full play, because there's such a risk of re-injury. So that's really what it comes down to. And that's where some of the position might make a difference. So, for example, the wide receivers who do a lot of sprinting, it can be a little slower for them to return versus maybe some of the power positions like the interior linemen. They potentially could get back a little bit sooner.
Does the grade of the injury have any correlation to where specifically the injury is? Maybe close to the knee, maybe somewhere mid-hamstring, or closer to the buttocks?
Yeah, definitely. So the closer you are to the tendon part of the hamstring, the slower the recovery. So if it's closer up to the buttocks where the hamstring attaches, those can be quite slow and difficult to recover. Much more favorable to have an injury in the mid portion of the hamstring where the muscle belly is. Those tend to do a lot better, much easier recovery.
Are there hamstring issues that you see arise where, all right, there's some pain, but it's benign enough that you'll recommend the athlete go ahead and just try to work through it and stay in competition?
Yeah, so the mid-muscle belly ones can be like that. If it's a lower grade injury where their function level's pretty high, they're able to get up to speed pretty quick, and it's more mildly bothersome. Those are some that you can work through. That happens, you know, every week in a high school setting, in a collegiate setting, and even at the NFL setting, stuff that you don't even hear about.
Want to talk about a player who plays the same position but hasn't played yet. Chris Jenkins, a rookie from Michigan. Right before the season starts, he has thumb surgery. And the word was, look, he could maybe play as soon as week 2. That didn't happen. They're obviously thin at that position, so there's an increased spotlight on him. I guess take me through how it's possible to go from the operating table to the field with this specific injury in such a short amount of time.
You know, I'm not sure what the specific injury is. There's not a lot of public information on that. The one thing that I could think of about the thumb is no matter what they did to it, a lot of times you can protect it with specific bracing or casting. And so I'm speculating, of course, but if they did a procedure that was relatively minor and felt like they could protect it as a lineman in a cast or a brace, maybe that's sort of the angle on it, but it's hard to know exactly what was done.
I guess it's worth asking, what type of thumb injuries typically require surgery?
So the most common one from a sports standpoint is something called an ulnar collateral ligament sprain. There's a couple different names for it, but it's a tear of the ligament at the base of the inside of the thumb. And that's one of the common injuries where an athlete might have to have surgery for something like that if it's just healing up kind of loose. The surgery would be to tighten it up.
I want to ask about a player who was, unfortunately from our standpoint, terrific against the Bengals on Sunday, Isiah Pacheco, a running back, who then fractured his fibula And so he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Well, what's interesting is I hear about the injury, and my first thought is, well, he's not going to play this year. But they're still allowing for the possibility that he comes back maybe within 8 weeks. How does that happen?
Yeah, so the fibula is the smaller of the two bones in the lower leg. So it doesn't bear as much weight as the larger bone, the shin bone or the tibia. And if it's a pretty simple fracture, something we might refer to as a direct blow, like maybe he took a knee or a cleat right to the fibula and it cracks a little bit. If it's really well lined up and all the ligament structures in the ankle and the knee are intact, you basically throw it in a boot and let it heal, and he'll be rehabbing along the way. And the healing time's not terrible. So that's something where a player could come back in the same season. Not a big injury necessarily.
Dr. Matt DesJardins from OrthoCincy is with us. While I have you as a medical professional online, I want to talk about what I think is the biggest injury in the sport right now, and that's a head injury, a concussion. Tua Tagovailoa, Miami Dolphins, who is just, unfortunately, he keeps getting these concussions. It's his third one. He has missed 5 games due to concussion back in 2022. And so there's a long list of commentators, players, former players, his former college coach, Nick Saban, advising that he hang it up. I'm more interested in somebody with a medical background, even if it's not specifically concussions. As you kind of take in this debate, what do you think?
Yeah, so this is a really, really complex decision-making. On the front end, the NFL concussion protocol is really designed to help guide medical professionals in terms of getting the athlete back in the near term, a couple games later or a game later or that season. The protocol is really not designed to make complex decisions such as, hey, this is your third big injury in 2 or 3 years, or, hey, you're having really lingering symptoms. Those are very complicated decisions dealing with the player's career. Obviously, it has a lot to do with contracts and a lot to do with life after the NFL. So those are really individual. They'll involve the player, the player's family, probably agents, multiple medical recommendations on it. Really, really complicated decision-making.
I guess, Tua has access to world-class medical care, unlimited resources. You see concussions at the youth level, at the high school level. And, look, obviously high school athletes are cared for now better maybe than they ever have been, but it obviously is a little bit different. When you're talking about concussions at that level, do you ever get to a point where you, at least in football, advise a kid to maybe not play?
Absolutely. There's a couple things that you really look for along that line. So obviously multiple injuries is the obvious one. But if there's a couple other things, such as if the athlete is slower to recover with each injury, that could be a warning sign. The other one would be the concussions come with less of an impact. That's also a warning sign that the brain is getting more and more vulnerable, just like could happen with any other body part. So if you see that pattern in the setting of multiple injuries, it would be good medicine to consider that athlete retiring from a collision-based sport or a high-risk activity.
Awesome expertise, as always. Thank you so much. We'll do it again soon, Doctor. Do appreciate it.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. That's our guy, Dr. Matt DesJardins, OrthoCincy. I say this every week. The great thing about the people at OrthoCincy is they have specialists and locations across the tri-state, including walk-in orthopedic urgent care, weekdays 9A to 9P and Saturdays 9A to 1P at both Edgewood and Anderson. It's easier and cheaper than going to an ER when you have an urgent orthopedic injury. Go to OrthoCincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. Hey, it's Mo Egger. Summertime means warm nights on the outdoor patio at Long Neck Sports Grill. They've got 4K TVs outside, so you don't have to miss a game. Awesome wings, Northern Kentucky's best beer selection, great service, 3 terrific locations in Northern Kentucky, and maybe you could have a Long Necks in your neighborhood. Your chance is here. Go to longnecksportsgrillfranchise.com. That's longnecksportsgrillfranchise.com. Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay long. Come often.